How do you give thanks when your own son was murdered in cold blood? Tonight, ahead of Thanksgiving, we sit down with Ruth Markel. She, of course, as you know, is the mother of Dan Markel, the FSU law professor who was gunned down in his Tallahassee driveway July 18th, 2014, succumbing to his injuries the very next day. And yet, despite all of it, Ruth is here to share what she still finds gratitude for, from law enforcement and prosecutors to even Judge Stephen Everett overseeing the case, and even to content creators who help keep Dan's memory alive.
Welcome to the global phenomenon, Surviving the Survivor. Here's your host, Emmy award-winning journalist, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to Surviving the Survivor. This is the show that brings you the very best guests in all of true crime. And it was Canadian Thanksgiving a few weeks ago, and now American Thanksgiving. And someone who has shown more strength, grace, and perseverance than most of us could ever imagine, Ruth Markel, the mother of murdered FSU law professor Dan Markel, joins us more than 11 years after her son was taken from us in this horrendous murder for hire plot. And it is a case that continues to unfold all this time later. And yet, Ruth comes here not with anger, but with gratitude for the detectives and investigators. Without those investigators, there may never have been any trials. Gratitude for the prosecutors who put it all together, and even the judge who has presided over this case with a lot of dignity, and for the community writ large, the Justice for Dan Markel community, including all the content creators. This is not about reliving tragedy. This is about the power of thankfulness, of gratitude, especially during this time. Here she is, the one and only Ruth Markel. There she is. So, Ruth, thank you for being here. It's got to be a strange time for you where the world is giving thanks. At least we are in America. And I know Canadian Thanksgiving was a few weeks ago. And you have a lot that you could be very upset about, yet you want to offer your own thanks. Where's this come from?
Well, first of all, Joel, let me thank you. I'll start out with all the positive thanks. I do have to thank you, certainly Steve Cohn, Ileana, and Carm for staying focused on the Dan Markel story. You did cover the whole trial, cover the afterward, and still covering. So there's a lot of gratefulness there. Certainly to you and your teams and all of the other certain media and so forth. But the really reason I wanted to come forward today, Thanksgiving for me is probably pensive and certainly memorable and has good feelings, a lot of good feelings. An American Thanksgiving, because we really celebrated this more often with Dan when he was alive. And Canadian Thanksgiving is I'd call it a more minimalist holiday. It's not the same thing that the families get together here really for Christmas and Hanukkah, and not as much for Thanksgiving. If it works, it works. But in the States, as you all know, and I learned very early when Danny left to Harvard, one of my friends told me, don't expect him home just for Thanksgiving. So here we are, American Thanksgiving. I wanted to use this time this year, particularly because it's a little bit of a different post-trial from Donna Adelson. And there's a lot of people who are often in what I'll call the background. There's many people in the front stage, certainly the prosecutors, and we'll come to them, and all the content creators. But there's a lot of people who are, let's say, not given the sort of face, memory, and recognition. And this year, I actually want to start with the judge, although everybody sees his face all the time in the court. When we end up saying at the end of the programs and, the end of the trials, I should say, or sentencing, we always say we thank the court. But I want to just say this year that Judge Stephen Everett deserves a standing ovation. And that's really what's pushing me to kind of make this acknowledgement, because I think that he's commendable of how he kept justice, how he monitored the court, and he kept the equilibrium, maybe his personal equilibrium as well, through all the challenges. So he's my first start, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the people behind the scenes that you don't really see. And of course, we are very supported by family, friends, and Gibson and Dunn, the legal firm, who we also don't always talk about in the most public arena. And then going to the state attorney's office, there's a woman, her name is Helene Potluck. Now she doesn't get any profile, and she's the victim liaison, and she ushers us around and protects us and finds us, special locations, and even had to help me this year to go to the hospital. So
Mm,
I think that I just want to really recognize her. And unfortunately, she had a loss in her family. And then
mm.
I'll comment on some of the others, but I'll let you
Yeah.
continue.
Well, I always see Helene. I never knew her name till this very moment, which just goes to show you there are important people behind the scenes. But that begs the question. A lot of people don't know, but you took a little spill during Donna's trial. Are you all healed up? You look good.
Yeah, I'm getting there, much better. I had to come back and do a few more X-rays and stuff, but it's the serious stuff is non-existent. There's still a couple of traces of bruising, but we're good.
Mm.
We're really good.
Good, good. And Donna's trial was brutal. Particularly some of the things that she and Harvey had to say at the sentencing. That had to really, for lack of a better way to put it, probably eat away at you and the family. But yet you're giving thanks. I mean, where do you find the strength? Having just sat through yet another trial, and arguably this might have been the toughest one to sit through, as she's been cast as the mastermind, although there's some debate about that. But where do you get the strength physically after something as grueling as that, and then on top of it wanting to thank people uh for it?
Well, first of all, I want to say that Donna's trial, not the trial itself, this period, probably from December 2024 to now, well, not now, till October 13th, till sentencing, was a very difficult one. It was a harder experience because it started early. Like normally, you come to the month before the trial, and you're getting kind of ready. But this started with all the motions before and all the hiccuping before and so forth, with every motion, every week, something happening. You had to watch, you had to listen. It was continuous from the end of December, maybe even before 2024. So this was a hard trial. This was no question a very tough experience. And it does take a little longer. I always use the concept of equilibrium. So you get into a period of disequilibrium during and after the trial, but really before as well this year. And hopefully we're on the incline. And I think, I do have, how do I say it, a positive gift, I would say. Part of it is a gift about resilience. I do believe that resilience, part of it is natural. So there may be even some, I'll even say there's genetics here, and some of it is planned. So it depends even in your life, who are the role models and how do you make choices that you want to have. For me, it's distractions, it's connections, it's other things to do, and that you have to be able to put aside some of the very negative stuff.
Yeah, and now, I'm just curious about sort of like the roller coaster effect of all this. So there's a lot of high highs and sort of low lows. With our community, people are constantly emailing me, "Hey, it's so quiet. What's going on?" When it gets when there's a quieter period like right now, is that difficult?
No, actually, truthfully, I do find the quieter period a little better. But I don't think there should be. I'll say it in a different way. A code of silence when people still have to talk about uncertainty and waiting, because that's what we might be doing. We don't know what's next and so forth. And at the same time, I think that you should pick up as much as you can to try to go back to what was your previous state of mind or activities, and of that sort. So I think it's a challenge, but I think for me right now, I'm actually feel good about the quiet period, because the other period this particular year, and don't forget I did really have to recuperate a little bit, so I'm happy to be more feeling the upbeat. And of course, if you go for vacation or any of those things, which I'm planning to do, those are all things that help me cope
Yeah, and I'm
better.
excited because you're headed south toward me, so I'm excited to
That's
see you.
right. I'm on my way to South Florida. Here I come. Yeah.
I'm excited to see you in a few weeks. But when you look back to the early days of this case, and Surviving Survivor got on later to this case, but you've obviously, as Dan's mother, been involved from the moment this happened. What is the progress over this long period of time that sort of stands out to you the most?
Well, I think the real progress is probably more internal, which people don't realize, which is
Mhm,
the internal suffering, right? When you these first 5 years are brutal. Okay, we're in year 11, so even although we're on this long and windy road, I do want to acknowledge how impacted you are first by the murder, the shock, and the ill effects and health effects even for me
mhm.
and others, I'm sure. And then after that, you sort of come to a reality that, and this takes time. This is really, I'm going into victims and suffering for a moment, only because this is no free ride here. And it does, I want to just say that anybody who has lost, and I'm going to talk about loss now and Thanksgiving, really, the period of a holiday coming up with people who do suffer, that the holidays are very difficult in the first 5 years, 6 years. Not that they get better or easier; they're more leveled off. It's not as much what you call anticipatory grief. You're not worried about it. How do we talk about it? Do we talk about is really the issue of loss and a holiday? And I say a little bit like, no, there shouldn't be a code of silence. Really, there should really be an opportunity to face a holiday with a little bit of acknowledgement that things aren't what they were or how different they could be, and then move into being grateful, which we still are. So I do feel there, but I also I'm very sensitive to the history of loss. And I never want to minimize it, because what we look like 11 years later is not what was 5 years before. You know what I'm saying? So I think I really don't want people to ever feel that, oh my God, I'm in the dumps, I'll never get out of it, and so forth. Takes a lot of time and work.
Yeah, and that was gonna actually be one of my final questions, but since you touched on it, you've kind of become this person that a lot of other victims lean on. I actually got an email the other day that I plan to forward to you from someone who said, "Hey, I live in North Jersey, and I have grandchildren, and I'm unable to see them because of a very bitter divorce. And I was wondering if I could reach out to Ruth Markel." And obviously, I was going to forward you to that and speak to you about it. But you've become sort of this pillar of advice and strength for people, not just who have endured murders in their family, but also, you helped create this Grandparent Alienation Act in the state of Florida. So people look to you for advice in that regard. So, I mean, what is your sort of overarching advice? And I think you just gave some of it to these other fellow victims who are dealing with some of the same things that you have dealt with and continue to deal with.
First of all, I want to say that, and it's really important to talk about not just the murder part, but the social issues. And I really want to recognize them, of divorce and estrangement. And they are definitely very painful. My advice is, and now I'll even move into homicide survivors or victims in general. There is an acknowledging the period of uncertainty, which is huge, and waiting. So that is a normal phase for a very long time, but you shouldn't get stuck there. Okay, so like what I'm trying to say is, you have to be there. There's no question you're going to be there. It's not good. It's not feeling good, but then don't, try not to sort of get stuck on the, and then what gets you moving is experts, is support groups, is really staying connected, is really seeking information. If you're not active in removing yourself from the stuck position, I'll call it, then you are there more longer, permanently, sometimes, hopefully not. So all of this requires a certain amount of work, and the work can be internal, but the work can also be very external. by joining, by getting information, by walking, by doing, I say prioritize your well being. For me, this could be sometimes, I like pampering as a stress reliever. So we're all different in what is going to make us, feel better and where. But I do think you have to be active on that. And that is probably one message, and get support. The support is vital, and you cannot do any of these problems alone. And the estrangement issue, let me address that differently. The estrangement issue is just keep on working at keeping the door open. I've heard from my own friends who have problems will tell me, I can't take another piece of something thrown in my face. I can't, why should I stick around for the garbage? And I say, let the garbage sometimes come in so that opens the door a little bit. Now, most people don't like that, but I think that's an important part of it, that you do have to take some stuff that you're not willing to take, and don't think just all the time about protecting yourself, and really go after the kids. That's the strongest message. Whatever way you can do it when there's young children involved or older children involved, and it isn't easy. I'm still on a very rocky road, but I'm still trying, and I think that that's probably the most important part of it. And do express great gratitude. And I'm going to go back to my own gratitude because I know we'll close off soon. But I do want to say that I am grateful to the state attorney's office, certainly to Jack, Georgia, and Sarah and Jason, and of course law enforcement, Craig Isom, Pat Sanford, and Corbett. And I think there's some retirements out coming soon, so we might get some new news. I always have to drop a little bomb somewhere. so, so there's and some things that are on the horizon, and so it changes. And then we are thankful because we've had this great support really from all of these teams, and of course all the media, the content creators, and the full gang of individual support as well in the Tallahassee
Yeah.
community.
And just a couple of quick questions. So I think a lot of people have this perception, there've been all these convictions, obviously most recently Donna. Um, does that sort of help heal the pain? Or is that just, I don't know, another step in the process? I mean, in other words, when someone like Donna is convicted, does that bring you, I don't know, like some sort of solace, uh, or is it just do you just view it as this is part of the process, this is a step, but it's not necessarily bringing my son back. It's just one more thing that we've got to do.
Donna's sentencing was significant. I
Mhm,
will be the first to say that. I've said that
mhm,
before in a different context, whether I call her the architect, the conductor. You've heard me. I probably said it on your show. It is a very significant happening, and I don't want to minimize it.
mhm,
But we all compartmentalize to cope in general. It doesn't affect the loss of Dan. In other words, there's no relationship, no correlation, no affiliation. They're like two separate pockets in my world. But having said that, on the point of justice, on the point of where we are in the public with all of this, I think for me that was a very significant happening. I know she's appealing, but I do believe that there had to be some, kind of facing up to reality. And we heard all the attacks. I mean, the attacks just really showed more of who they are. So I am definitely saying publicly that that was a very significant result and outcome. And I thank everybody who worked on that, public and privately, to make that happen.
yeah, and then this last question is obviously difficult to ask, but if Dan were here today and he could see Ben and Lincoln, what would he be most proud of, do you think? And what would he be thankful for?
If Dan could see Ben and Lincoln today as sort of maturing adolescents
Yeah.
at this stage, I think the I do speak to both Ben and Lincoln, and one of the things that I appreciate about them both is they do have this capacity to relate or to create some conversation, limited as it may be. But I think Dan would really be proud that they had bar mitzvahs, and
Mm,
they had, this would really can fill in his life mission and ours too. Our cultural beliefs or wants, let's call it, would really want that the boys had the bar mitzvahs, and they did. And I think in that respect, then you could say that they continue some Jewish life, which is important, and Jewish camps, and that is a reality. And I think that that's the part that, from Dan's, now I'm talking from a parenting point of view, for
yeah.
his love and for what he would miss them, he would be devastated. But from the positive sort of growth of watching, and us too, for that matter, that they both know, enough of the Jewish lifestyle or the community, whether Lincoln plays basketball or they went to sometimes to temple, and they both had a very legitimate bar mitzvah experience. So I think that would be really something that he would be grateful for,
Yeah.
and sort of, and we are too.
And before Ruth gives her last thoughts, I just want to say personally, as a supporter of law enforcement, that I am grateful to the investigators in Tallahassee, myself, to Craig Isom, to Pat Sanford, the FBI agent, to Georgia, to Sarah, to Jack Campbell, and all the people, Helene, who is the courtroom advocate for the Markels, all these people, and the many people in that office who never get their names mentioned. A huge thanks to them. And of course, Judge Stephen Everett. He overwhelmingly is one of the fan favorite judges of all the true crime stories that we cover. A guy is so likable, yet has such an unbelievable command of the courtroom. And he's a big reason, just the way he conducts himself and the grace that he has. So I'm wishing all those people a happy Thanksgiving as well. And Ruth, as always, as my adopted second Jewish mother, you get the final word on this Thanksgiving.
Well, first of all, really a happy Thanksgiving to you. I know you're traveling, and safe travels, and enjoy the family and everyone else. And really, thank you to your audience. We didn't thank them as much as we could. The Dan Markel community outside of sort of, let's call it, law enforcement, Tallahassee, and so forth, is enormous. And it's not just enormous in watching the media, it is really enormous in its value for keeping Dan's legacy alive. So we do have a lot to be grateful for.
Yeah. Ruth Markel, always an inspiration. Thank you for being here. And I'm also giving thanks to Phil and Shelly, who I've gotten to know really well and love them both. And the entire Markel family from Montreal to wherever else it extends, and to SDS Nation. Love you, America. Love you, Canada. Happy Thanksgiving. And as always, justice for Dan Markel.